afternoon, good morning, good evening. How are you? So I got some requests about the themes from the story Game Over by Nashire Sieunda. So of course you know that this is a story, the first story in Bridges Without Rivers, and I'm so glad that I'm coming to present this. We don't have so many themes after all in this short story, and of course we'll be doing all the short stories because most of the requests I've got from the comment section is about either themes, styles, or character and characterization. However, if you check on previous videos, maybe done in 2024, you realize that we've done some of these stories already, and maybe we're just now doing it for emphasis purposes. And if I get time, I'll be actually giving you the links to the specific videos so that you refer to them. Thank you for being such patriotic audience, and I hope that whatever we are sharing here is actually enhancing teaching and the learning process. Now, as students or teachers who are concerned with the literature, remember that literature has become one branch on its own. Now that we have separated linguistics from literature, it's very important that you understand aspects of themes, which we also call concerns. Sometimes we call them issues. So, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to my channel if you've not done so, Edutainment for Us TV, so that we can continue actually wheeling into this academic journey. Now, the first theme from the story Game Over by Nashire Sieunda, of course, that runs from page 1 to 11, is poaching. I hope everybody understands when I'm talking about poaching. Remember, among the expectations under JS is to teach on conservation of the environment, as well as reserving the game park and the animals within it. So poaching becomes a theme because it actually touches on the shooting of animals. Now, when you look at this story, page 1, of course, you see Mugeni and Lengai aiming at a rhino, right? They are targeting to shoot and get horns, and that is exactly on page 1. We also check on page 3. What will you see? Mugeni is in the forest to hunt, dehorn, and transport the products to the employer, who is Chung Ling. When we get to page 2, of course, I hope that you saw Lengai thinking about how horns actually exposed animals to poaching. So even though he's there poaching with Mugeni, he's so afraid about whatever is happening. Check on page 3, you will see Mugeni very confident that he should obtain horns. Yeah, he even had to shoot a pregnant rhino, and then he had to dehorn the young one. He was wishing to do so. Now, that is the first theme. I don't know how you feel about this aspect, because I know some of you have a career in wildlife and protection of animals. How do you feel about this? Are you a supporter of poaching, or do you stand against it? So let's get to the second theme. Of course, it's greed and lack of integrity. I'm placing these two together, but you can separate them actually. Even though the illustrations seem to be similar, you can discuss each separately. Now, when you look at greed, the leaders and guides, they knew that rhinos are protected, right? And still, they went ahead to ask for money so that they poach. Of course, they were asking for a lot of money, to the sum of 50,000 shillings for a horn and more. So check on page 4, you will see evidence on this. When you check page 9 and 10, what do you see? You actually see that there is greed for money, and it encourages Mugeni, Lengai, and the likes to kill a lot of rhinos, despite knowing that they are becoming scarce and extinct from the park. We actually see on page 7 that the wildlife officers, they receive a lot of, bribes from poachers. And as we can see, Lengai was part of this. So he gave a spot. The poachers got a spot where the largest herd of animals were, the rhinos. and the best time to shoot. Yeah. So when you check at page 7, you'll see that when Lengai was working as a guide in the park, that is what most of his colleagues did. And one day he was set, then he lost his job, right? So how do you feel about lack of integrity? Lacking that aspect or thought to do the right. Yeah, when people are not watching you, then you decide to do the wrong. So we actually see that it's leading it is directed by greed, that desire to have more and more. The third theme from this story is selfishness. So I hope when you read page 9, you meet the aspect of the poachers, the guides, trying to actually destroy the habitats of these animals and sometimes even shoot them. Now, instead of letting rhinos produce, because they're getting extinct, and just die a natural death, or to praise. Now, we see that a lot of poachers are killing animals, and this is endangering them, actually. Checking on page 7, Lengai and Johnny, yeah, they kill a rhino that is almost calving. And we see Johnny checking whether the calf that has just been pulled out of the mother's womb has horns too. What sort of selfishness is this? So disgusting, right? Yeah, so we get to another situation, page 8. Lengai reveals that poaching schemes of his bosses had been going on, and he was actually falsely accused of aiding in such activities, after which he is suspended, and this made him very desperate and poor. So you see, this is an act of selfishness that guides the loss of job by Lengai. Another important theme here is materialism. And what do we see? When people are driven to wealth, rather, like money and all that, we call it materialism. Huh? Yeah, so Mugeni sees poaching and shooting as a rewarding mission. Yeah, so that's why he keeps poaching, especially the rhinos. When you check on page 8, what do you see? You actually see that there is 50,000 shillings offered to Lengai, and that persuades him to go along and hunt for the rhinos, regardless of his conscience telling him not to do so. When you check page 9, Chung Ling makes a down payment of about 800,000 shillings for the goods to be delivered. Hence, Mugeni is convinced to poach, and that is page 9. We again see Lengai decides to kill, or rather pull the trigger and shoot the rhino when Mugeni pays him 100,000 shillings right in the park. We have poverty and desperation. This situation is actually seen in Lengai after losing his job. After losing his job, he is quite poor for 8 years, to an extent that he cannot afford a meal. Yeah, he spends 2 nights without a meal, and by the time Mugeni finds him, he's ready to do anything. We have brutality, which is also known as cruelty. So from page 7 to 8, Lengai and Johnny kill pregnant rhino, which is almost calving, and Johnny dips his hand in the canal of the rhino and pulls out a calf. Then he goes ahead to check whether it has horns. So disgusting, right? You feel like you would puke at listening to this, or rather reading it in the text. Mugeni knows that rhinos are much endangered, yet he assures Chungling that there is nothing impossible in the country. And of course, remember, Chungling needed a lot of rhino horns. Yeah, if you can remember the number, there were so many. So there was going to be a bloodshed, and he's ready to do it. He's quite encouraging Lengai to do so. Now, when they are poaching, he actually kind of even confronts Lengai asking him why he can't shoot, because he doesn't, understand why Lengai is trying to be human and even preach to him. Another theme is animal rights and wildlife conservation. Yeah, so when you look at the text, you see Seunda, the author is educating the readers about animal rights. And that is why we see that there is this reaction which is restraining Lengai from shooting the rhinos all along while they're in the park. We also see that there are consequences of trying to poach animals. If you're found, then you will be arrested and all that will be conducted on you. Yeah, rhinos are also guarded a lot against shooting. They are not supposed to be shot at any time. We also see Lengai and Mugeni alongside other notorious poachers getting arrested for poaching at the end of the story. We have media as another theme, and we actually see on page 4 the images and information that tourists are being offered on Tourism Service Board. They're hinting at poachers where the endangered animals are. The last theme to access in this story is law and justice. Now, law prohibits poaching, and guys are assigned to hinder this. Check on page 14. Again, when we check on page 14, we realize that Chungling is just trying to trigger people like, Mugeni to go hunting, then they are caught. And that is how we arrest Lengai and Mugeni when they are practicing poaching. Yeah, so thank you for having paid attention to my discussion. And if you need the styles, then we'll be talking about it alongside other stories within Bridges Without Rivers, because I know this is one of the stories that is set even in the forthcoming exam. So stay tuned and have a nice time. Bye-bye for now.